Okay, welcome to our next session at DC Startup Week. This is day 2, and I'm calling you live, or I'm Zooming live from the WeWork in downtown DC. My name is Seema Alexander. If you guys don't know who I am by now, I've probably been on multiple of these panels, but I'm the founder and Chief Strategy Officer for Disruptive.ceo. I work with visionary founders on growth and scale. I've had the honor and privilege of curating the growth track for this year's DC Startup Week. So there are about 16 panels and workshops focused for growth stage entrepreneurs that run the gamut from branding, marketing, strategy, funding, digital marketing, like we're gonna have this conversation right now, partnerships, and much, much more. So at the end of our conversation, I may share a couple additional talks that are happening today. And then you can look up the rest of them on Attendify, which is the platform that you guys have been coming in from. So with that said, I am really excited to introduce this panel. There is nothing like, to me, in growth stage, understanding the importance of digital marketing. I think there's a lot of nuances and a lot of myths and a lot of things that need to be shared with this audience. And we have an incredible group of panelists that are more than capable experts to share so many different perspectives. So we have 2 agency partners and 2 founders. And the founders, one is a service-based provider and another is an e-commerce provider. So we're going to share strategies from both sides. So with that, I'm going to introduce individual panel members and then ask them to share a little bit more about themselves. The first panelist is Matt Self. He's a partner at Conklin Media. So Matt, can you share a few words about your background?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks, Seema, for hosting this. So what I've done for 15 plus years, maybe that's smart or not smart, is really to help companies grow, right? And I really do think I have the greatest job position in the world just to be able to consult with people like you and to really advise on the right tactics needed to grow. A lot of them our conversation today is going to be about digital. And as you probably know, there's a lot of different tools and platforms that you can use. So really helping you identify what is the best course of action for your business. That's what brings me a lot of joy. So happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Looking to hear a lot from you today. Maria Meadows, she's a partner at Model B. Maria, can you give a little bit about your background?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Maria Meadows. I'm the president and partner here at Model B, which is a DC-based advertising agency. Like Matt, I've had the privilege to spend the last 15 years of my career paving new revenue streams for companies through digital media. I've led the digital transformation for USA Today, and I've also led the digital growth strategy at Network Solutions, which many of you may know as web.com, which really has given me the foundation to work with entrepreneurs across the country. And I think, one thing that's held true across my entire career is that entrepreneurs and really companies of all sizes are navigating what I call the too muchness of the digital landscape. It's always on. It's ever changing. It's almost like an all-you-can-eat content buffet. And so because of that, I see a lot of entrepreneurs and brands struggling with where to start, and most importantly, which platforms are the best platforms to actually have a two-way dialogue with their audiences. And because of that, here at Model B, we've developed a technology that really helps companies find shortcuts to their best path to conversion. So I'm really excited to share some of those winning approaches with each of you alongside a really smart panel. So thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you, Maria. And I know with your background, your tremendous background, there's so much nuggets that are going to come out of our conversation today. So I'm going to introduce our first founder, Jubee Vilceus of Yellowtail Training. Jubee?
Hello, my name is Jubee with Yellowtail. So we focus on IT training, but more system engineering. So I literally stumbled on digital marketing when I was working on a separate project, pet project of mine, working on, helping young adults with money, managing their money. And then I got into that, trying to learn digital marketing to be able to access those young kids because that's where they hang out, which is online. And then I realized I learned so much that I was able to bring back to Yellowtail. And with what I learned in digital marketing, I brought it back to my main company, which is Yellowtail, and we were able to actually use that and see massive growth, especially this year. So that's why I'm here to
Yeah,
share.
I'm really excited to get into your story because post-COVID, you've had dramatic growth with what you're doing with Yellowtail, specifically through sales funnels. So looking forward to having that discussion in a few minutes. And our last panelist, Chris Thomas, he's the CEO of Eli Mason and a couple other multiple brands. But Chris, could you give your background, please?
Oh yeah, thank you, Seema, for having us and for putting all this together. And I got to tell you, I know how smart each of these other people you included, Seema, are, and I'm a little bit shocked that I'm even part of this. But I'm grateful to be a part of it. My name is Chris Thomas. I run a brand called Eli Mason. It's a pretty simple brand. We make an old-fashioned cocktail mixer. So we use premium bitters. We use real cane sugar from the state of Florida. And we make a mixer that makes creating your own old-fashioned cocktail at home super easy, super fast, and it's consistent and delicious every single time. And we have, through building some really good relationships, we've been able to leverage digital marketing over the last year to attain 500% growth in our business. We are an e-commerce business, and that has been fantastic for us. And so that's why I'm here, is, I guess, to share a little bit of that story, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you, Seema.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your background. So I'm going to actually start with a couple baseline questions because I think when we think about digital marketing, it can mean so many different things. And Maria, you alluded to that in your initial remarks, right? So I do want to hear, I'm going to start with Matt actually. What do you think? Like, what does digital marketing mean to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of a literal brain, so it really, to me, I start with the actual literal definition, which is just the idea that digital is utilizing the internet, and it's utilizing computers and smartphones and the smart home category, such as Amazon and Echo and the Google Home, right? So it's not a whole lot different than marketing of the past. It's just the mediums in which we're using it. I think it still all comes down to the right message, to the right person at the right time, and in this case, on the right platform. So, yeah, it's just another means of marketing to me. But there's obviously a lot of benefits to it. It's why it's grown while other traditional advertising mediums have declined. And,
Yep.
and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about those. But from the idea of just accountability and measurability. And the ability certainly to target is just far exceeds anything else we've seen in advertising.
So that's exactly what I mean. Those are three key points: the targetability, the measurability, the data that you receive from digital marketing. Those are very distinctive than a lot of the traditional ways of marketing in the past. So thank you for that, Matt. Maria, I'm sure you want to add to that. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I always have something to add.
Yeah.
But Matt's points land so well, and I agree with everything you said. To me, when I think digital marketing, for me, it means the real-time proof points, the insights, and the validations about product market fit. I think digital media, unlike other advertising forums, is so information rich. And I think several brands and organizations miss the opportunity to really lean into that data and, more importantly, know how to actually apply it. So I work with each of my clients to outline their business KPIs in addition to their marketing KPIs because they're interlinked. And so while as an agency, we're all accountable to delivering the result. I mean, that's the cost to play. I think it's important to take the opportunity to process all the data that's available and that's coming in real time to apply that to your overall business strategy, because it's really about how you build sustainable scale. And this digital media, any medium, gives you the ability to pivot in real time.
So Maria, you said the words KPI, and we have early stage founders in here and growth stage. So I want to make sure people understand what some of our agency acronyms mean. Can you share what that means?
Yeah, so your key performance indicators, or for lack of better words, just the business outcomes you're looking to drive.
Okay, so I'm going to switch the question to Jubee and Chris, okay? Because again, we do have founders on this, obviously 62 founders on this call right now and growing. when a founder hears digital marketing, they're like, okay, it's website, it's SEO, it's Facebook, it's Google, like there's multiple layers. Like like with that in mind, was that overwhelming for you guys when you started down your journey? Or what was like your journey that really like, here is a strategy I'm going to go with digital marketing? Or were you as overwhelmed as most people get when they think about all the various ways to market digitally?
For me, the answer was yes, because before I had my little detour into my other project, I was overwhelmed, and I actually said, this is not the thing for me. I'm gonna stay small. I'm gonna build a business that's built on referrals, because it was working. You know, I convinced myself I'm gonna just not play in this because it was overwhelming. So what I realize is you don't have to master every areas of digital marketing to win. So for me, for example, I know there's so much more I can be doing, but now it's only Google, Facebook ads, and then a well-designed sales process. So what I could tell to most founders is don't try to understand or go at all the aspects of digital marketing all at once. Choose one platform, choose one way to speak to your customers, and improve on that. One platform alone can get you most of the time can get you to the results you're trying to get anyway.
So you said the word sales process. I'm going to get back to that and the concept of sales funnels in a second. But Chris, I would like to hear from you too, from a founder perspective, right? And obviously your product versus service. So any distinctions there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was super nervous when we started down this path of utilizing digital marketing to try to grow the brand. And what I've learned about myself is that I'm good at a few things. I'm not good at everything. Digital marketing is one of those things I was fairly ignorant about, and I wasn't skilled in that area. So I had to rely on building a really good relationship that I could trust and I could depend on to kind of educate me on the do's and don'ts and how that process would work. And so for us specifically, just to answer that original question, I think about digital marketing as using the internet, however that may look, via software or hardware platforms, different things like that, but to create an opportunity to engage our customers one-on-one, highly targeted customers that we feel like are going to be well receiving of the product we have to offer, and just to create an opportunity to build a relationship there that we hope at some point will develop into a transaction, and we have a product that we want them to use and enjoy and hopefully repurchase that many, many times over. But that's kind of the way we think about it, creating just an opportunity to start and build that relationship.
That's great. What I hear though is that's your strategic sales funnel. That was your objective, was to create that relationship, right? And so you created a sales funnel around that, which will hopefully relate to revenue and ongoing revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've identified the lead magnet that works for us, and we use Google, Facebook, Instagram, really whatever. We test a lot of different things, but we've identified those things that work really well for us to get people kind of in the relationship with us, and then we can begin that or continue that conversation with them.
That's good. So I think part of this conversation is going to be uncovering some of these words like lead magnet, like, you know, sales funnel, like all things that we probably all on this call know pretty well. And then the second half really focus on examples of what clients or yourself have actually done. So how do you put that sales funnel into action, and what did you see in terms of data and response and otherwise? So Matt, I'm going to ask you, like, can you share more of like the concept of a sales funnel and like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to do. Our agency, we trademarked a term that really is a fancy term for a sales funnel. We call it profit paths, and that's our site. You could visit it if you'd like, profit paths. But I think it's the idea of helping your potential buyer through that customer buying journey, right? Not everybody buys immediately. They may need to be reached over a period of time with multiple assets. So our process is really, I think, can be applicable to everybody on the call. We like to ideally start initially with picking a high margin or high market potential product or service, right? Let's start there. And then let's define the avatar. The avatar, again, that lingo is the person that's going to buy, or if it's an e-commerce buying online, or if it's a lead gen submitting a request online. So define that person. And then you develop assets very specific for that one particular person, the things that's going to resonate with them. An asset means a microsite, a digital interactive tool, an infographic, a white paper, a video, any number of those. Those are all, assets. And then you determine, again, the best platforms to reach them. And it could be, like Chris said, Facebook, Instagram, cold email, LinkedIn, webinars like this, podcasts, really effective. So it's just the funnel is from awareness to ultimately getting them through the bottom of the funnel, which is them becoming a customer, and then also becoming really a brand advocate for you. So the funnel doesn't stop just when they purchase, but if you continue to nurture them, if you will, into becoming a referral partner and, of course, a repeat customer.
So I'm going to step back, Maria. So this concept of funnel, it's like, how do you get somebody in from the top of the funnel, nurture them, and the goal is to have a sale, or at least be aware of your brand, and then figure out different branches to get to the sale. That's what I'm hearing. How do you design something like that if a client was to come to you? Like, what is the strategy around that? Because people, like founders, don't know, like, will they come to an agency partner? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so Matt, I think you've done a really good job of laying it down. I think it's a very good tactical process that scales, and we at Model B follow that similar flow. But there's a couple of points that I do want to make here. I think while the funnel looks really great on a PowerPoint, from engagement to interest to shopping, it's not linear. And I think we all know, and how we actually buy and convert. It's not this pretty straight funnel, right? So I think what's important first and foremost is that everyone has their unique shopping funnel and experience, and they're coming in from all angles. So that is one of the points that a brand grapples with, is what is the consumer journey for me? And we take a step back. So we spend anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks in the planning phase and do what Matt said, really focus in and prioritizing the products and services we want to focus on, the creative messaging for the campaign, and then the assets and the platforms. But I take it one step further. I think what's most important is to understand the user experience that you want to create. Because I always say that consumers aren't loyal to a brand, they're loyal to their experience. And that starts with the very first impression. So before we even go into the platforms, we take a step back and map the end-to-end experience. What's the first interaction point? What's the second one? And then what's their online experience? When they get to your website, what happens next? I think a lot of agencies fall short of kind of following that all the way through and then looping back. So I hope that answers the question. I think the first step is what is the experience you want to exemplify? And then where do we start? I think because you are so passionate about your products and services, you want to do it all at once. And I think that's a flawed approach, especially if you're new to digital media. I think you start on your key value prop, or your key area of distinction, and you build up from there.
Yeah, and please, audience members, I don't know if I shared this in the beginning, but please add your questions, any questions to chat, and as I'll take a look during the time. We can answer a few in the middle, and then definitely a lot at the end. So I'm going to skip this to a founder perspective, because part of the, again, like I said, part of this is educational. What are funnels? What is the right terminology and lingo, and just understanding the importance of digital in growth. But part of it is the reality of a founder, right? It's kind of like, again, it goes back to the stage of like being overwhelmed and not having enough money, or having a certain budget done, but not knowing where to put it. So I don't know, maybe Chris, you take this one first. Like, did you do it on your own and try to, there's lots of tutorials out there. There's General Assembly. I mean, so many people teaching things on Facebook ads and funnels and other things. Like, how'd you go about it, and what would you recommend for others?
Yeah, so we did try to do it ourselves a couple of years ago. Candidly, it did not go very well. It kind of goes back to that thing of, I know what I'm good at, and that isn't many things, but I really have to stay focused on those few things that I am good at for the brand. And so we tested out different relationships that, I think we talked about it in our kind of discovery meeting last week. I felt like I got burned. Now, I was ignorant about what we were doing, so I had not really taken the time to educate myself about what would be a reasonable expectation from a relationship like that. But the relationship that we originally started with came in and they promised really, really big results really, really quickly. And so that was enticing for me as a small business owner and operator. With what you mentioned, Seema, not a lot of cash to go around there. So we need to be able to invest our money very wisely. But I needed to kind of go through that, I feel like, to be able to identify what the key points in a good relationship would be so that I could notice those when that did come along.
And what were some of those key points, Chris?
Yeah, so under promising and over delivering, I think being very realistic and candid and transparent about what to expect as the customer. The relationship that we have been working with for quite a long time, which actually is Conklin Media and Matt's team. We've been working with them for a year and a half, but they came in and they were very realistic about this is not going to happen overnight. And here is exactly the process that we're going to go through to try to build this brand on the internet. And so I had more reasonable expectations, I think, the second time around. And when those expectations were starting to be met, that just built confidence in me.
Yeah. So I think this is interesting because we had a prep call and we all talked about this concept with a lot of founders. They feel burnt. You brought it up, Chris, right? So you attempt to hire somebody that is a Facebook ad expert or a trusted person in one at that time. And then you don't really understand the process. And I don't know if they don't explain it well, whatever happens, but at the end of the day, your objective didn't happen, right? And it might have happened once or twice even. So when I talk to a lot of founders and I work with a lot of founders, they're like, you know what, I've tried that. I'm not going to do that again. And so it's like, how do you, and Jubee, you have this story too, right? Where you did a lot of yourself, you hired people. So how do you get, because if you truly are trying to grow your business, digital marketing is and you have let me just clarify, ideal client, true ideal client, and it's identified. And you have a product that's validated, very important before you go out and try to market things, that these are things that people actually would want to purchase and you can deliver on that. How did you get over that hump? What did that look like for you?
So let me back up and explain you my journey. So like 4 years ago, I tried by myself, tried to run my ads by myself. It was a terrible idea. So I thought this was not gonna work. So I hired someone to help me with my ads. It didn't work. So what has worked for me is for me to go and learn this, buy programs, get coaching. I've invested quite a bit of time in educating myself in what digital marketing is, funnel building, redefining my customer avatar. So for me, and I don't know or don't think that all founders have that kind of time or bandwidth to put in that kind of work. For me, what has worked is I learned enough to be able to go and get partners to deliver on the details. For example, before I was just like Christopher, I thought I was burned, but it's because I didn't have enough data. I didn't spend enough in my marketing to actually collect the data and actually improve on it. So in my case, I realized in hindsight that I was not burned. It's just that these things, some of them take time. And if you don't understand the metrics, you might think you're wasting your time. You might think you're not investing in the right place, but it's just taking a little longer than you anticipated, which is okay. Yeah. So for me, my journey is slightly different than most people.
No, and Maria, I know you have a lot of thoughts around just measurement specifically. And like, that's the whole thing, right? It's like, if the thing with digital is that you can get so micro specific, hey, this landing page is not converting, or this, and that means maybe the message is off, maybe the image is off, or, you know, and I've also heard like, if your landing page doesn't look like your website, or like, you know, the brand is off, like little things matter. And there's a lot of art and science that goes into building funnels. It's not as easy as just slapping words and leveraging templates, like, you know, as some people say, you know. And so Maria, I'd love for you to share more about like, you know, the metrics aspect of the conversation, but just your thoughts on like what Jubee is saying, and how do you get, I guess by the time someone's coming to you, they're more open at this time, or do you guys still get those objectives with founders when they come to you?
We still get the objectives with founders that come to us. I think, you know, what's most important is that you're prepared to give yourself a 90-day runway for testing and learning. And that's really hard for a lot of founders, especially who haven't spent any money on digital, because 90 days is a long time. in the startup world. But I think what's most important is we're not saying that you're not going to have results in 90 days. It's just, it's an incremental build. So when working with an agency or doing the, you know, hiring resources in-house, whatever the plan is, I think it's first to really map your strategy ahead of time and really understand the baselines. If you have a website and you've been running your website, I really encourage brands to take time to pull a Google Analytics report and see what people are actually doing on the site. How much time are they spending? Where are they clicking through? Where are they bouncing? How deep in the site they're going? Google Analytics in of itself, you don't have to have an agency do that, is so data rich. And there's all these modules online. We're happy to send them to you of just how to interpret a Google Analytics report. But with any founder or any company that we work with, we establish the baselines. So we know what we're working with in terms of, if you have done digital advertising in the past, let's do an audit. Let's pull those reports. Let's look at the data and see what worked and what didn't work. Let's see what's happening on your site currently. And then we set milestones, 30 days out, what do we want to see, 60 days out, and 90 days. By 90 days, your campaign should be humming for the most part. That's giving you adequate time to build history in the platforms. You've done the testing and learning of what's the right user flow and message and target audience, and then you optimize from there. And then in terms of KPIs, what I think is important is there's kind of the baseline metrics that every campaign will give you: your reach, your impressions, your clicks to your website. But I think it's important to go a level deeper and really understand what's happening post-click and work backwards from there. So I would say my top metrics that I zero in on initially before making any optimization adjustments, whether that's target of audiences, whether that's messaging, or whether that's creative, it's what's the time on site? How deep are they reading in site? And then I take it to some of the business outcomes. What's your average customer sale compared to what you were getting? What is the lifetime customer value? Is your campaign actually bringing repeat business? And then what's the cost per acquisition and the cost per lead? Those are two metrics that I also focus in on. And I think it's important to note that your cost per acquisition, your cost per lead, if you're doing everything correctly, should lower 90 days in, 120 days in. That's a really good indicator of a well-performing campaign, is that you're actually driving efficiencies and your cost per lead is going down.
I mean, there were so many amazing nuggets in that, but like the cost per lead, the cost per acquisition, if any of you guys have resources to define some of that for our founders, or we can figure out a resource. I think, you know, these are the basics, but they're so important because all of these transactions, leveraging data and making decisions, that's exactly what digital marketing does. So when you nail your sales funnel, and we'll get to the Jubee and Chris story, when they nailed it, they saw exponential growth, but it took time. And so Matt, from your perspective, you know, when you work with a founder, like at what stage do you think is the right time to work with an agency partner? And look, there's a lot of freelancers as well who do a lot of work on digital, right? So like you guys are, I would say a mid-sized agency. So what's your perspective? When's the right time a founder should come to you guys?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. If I can, I'll come right back to it here in a minute, but I had to chime in on the whole idea of being burnt, because I've talked to hundreds of founders over the years that have been burnt, many of them legitimately so. And I, as the agency, have also been burnt. And I want to encourage you, to avoid being burnt, one of the best things you can do is be very transparent with that agency about what are your goals of the campaign and ultimately what is your budget. And I know you may not want to reveal budget right out of the gate, and that's fine, but ultimately, if the budget is here and the goals are here, if that's not made known up front, agency will take you on, and then they're going to be frustrated because they don't have the resources to meet those goals. And you're going to be frustrated because you gave them this amount of money, believing that they would hit those magical goals. So it's really important to define those up front. And they're all unique for every one of you guys. Every one of you. I have worked with news sites that selling ad space was all they cared about. So visitors, I didn't care about time on site, numbers of pages, visits. I didn't care about any of that. They made money the more people we got to the site. I've had social media startups where our objective was to get 1 million users simply. So in that case, they didn't care about visitors. They cared about if somebody created a profile because they couldn't begin to monetize their site until they had 1 million users, right? A guy like Chris, you know, he ultimately, he don't care if my team reports to him, hey, we got X amount of people there. We ultimately, all of those assisted conversions, they're valuable. They should be in a easy to read dashboard for you all, but he cares about sales. How many people bought old-fashioned mixers? Who couldn't go for an old-fashioned right now? I know I could. But
Trust me,
like,
we could go for it with the work we're doing this week.
you know, and Jubee too. Jubee ultimately cares about how many people fill out a consultation request. And there's lots of assisted conversions that contribute to that. But your agency should be helping you by certainly being 100% transparent with those ultimate indicators of success as number one. And you have an access to see those all the time. Another way you can get burnt is if they're operating behind some black curtain and you don't know what's going on. You should always own the data. You should own the accounts, and you should have access to view it all the time. And if you're not doing it, you have somebody on your team that's looking at it on a regular basis. So that said, Seema, back to your question as to when should they maybe look to partner with an agency? Great question. I've worked with people like right out of the gate. They literally don't have a logo, a website. They have no social media presence, and they come on board. And then I've had Fortune 500 companies that have all of those things really well established, and they've determined it's time to now hire an agency partner. So it's really unique based on the individual business. But I think if you can look at your business overall, and if you're seeing roadblocks of, hey, we know there's opportunity here on this platform and we're not doing it well. There's a lot of people out there like myself and Maria. There's a lot of good agency people that they'll be happy to give you specific advice based on where you're at. You may be running it all internally. Call us up and say, can you evaluate what I'm doing? There's another way that someone will get burnt. If they don't get under the hood of your data prior to sending you a contract and you sending them a credit card, that's a problem.
I agree with
huge.
that.
What
Make
a
them
great
get
point.
under the hood, get them
Yeah.
under the hood, and then they can say, I've had many guys where I'm like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for you to hire me yet. You're doing really well. And if you just did this and this, and maybe it's you need $500 worth of training and you could just keep doing it on your own and save money. That's sometimes the best thing. Then there's things that I look at and I'm like, yo, you cannot do link building well, and SEO is critical to your business. Here's how we could do it, and you need to hire me to do it.
Right.
So put agencies to the test to help you make that determination.
So what I heard from an agency perspective, if you're a founder, whatever partner you go to, they need to look under the hood. They have to be very and you as a founder, once you have figured out this may be a good agency for you, you need to give a minimum of 90 days for the testing. And I think, I wanted to make sure we balance on both sides, because it's like, without knowing the process, a lot of times we all get in our own head, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's very critical. I'm going to switch to Jubee and Chris and Maria and Matt, in a sense of let's give an example. Okay, we have about 10 minutes before I'm going to open it for questions, because we do have questions here and good ones. But I think when let's just be really practical. Tell me what your funnel is. Jubee, you start. What's your funnel?
Before I start saying that, you asked a question, I didn't get my chance to answer it. Digital marketing to me is direct response. That's what it means to me. Being able to directly speak to the people you are convinced really need your product. So that's where my funnel begins. Being able to, and that's all in my in things I've learned throughout the years, being able to craft a message that have people opt in to keep listening. So having a funnel to me is just having a process where people keep opting in to getting more. So you're moving them through a very precise and intentional process for them to keep opting in. From my ad, there are things I say, to call people out, to call my avatar out, and there are things I say to make sure if you're not that person, you're gonna keep scrolling or keep doing what you do. So for me, it's my funnel, my sales funnel is very simple. It's ad, but there's a lot of work that goes into the ad to actually attract and repel the right people, and it drops them to an opportunity to hear what our offering is, what our program is about, and it's a rather long presentation. And the first way I realized to have someone sit through a long presentation is to tell them it's going to be long. So the first thing I tell you, it's going to be 45 minutes. So make sure you have the time for that. And they go through that presentation, and they don't get the option to do anything until the end of about halfway to the presentation. And then they get a chance to book a call with myself or my team.
A strategy call.
A strategy call to understand, to keep investigating if it's indeed the right product for them. So my funnel is fairly straightforward. That's why when we were talking about KPIs, for me, one of the only KPI that matters is, did you book a career strategy session?
So I want to put perspective on that. Go ahead, Jubee.
How many opt-ins, how many people looked at the ad itself is good. It's good data because you have to be able to understand how it flows. But the KPI that matters for me is, were you able to go through, be convinced, and book a career strategy session with me?
Yeah. So just to give a background, Jubee's company, he does Linksys training for non-technical folks, okay, who want to become technical, have technical jobs, and he has a value proposition at the end that he actually has job placement. So this concept, he's a service-based provider who's leveraging an ad, and I just want you to understand, ads are not easy to create. Like, we can all create something in Canva. It's not like, there's multiple you have to test the ads in multiple ways. Then it goes to a landing page. Those words matter. The video on there matters. Everything has to be potentially tweaked.
The script and the presentation matters.
And then it can go to a conversion. So that's one. And then post-COVID for you, it exploded because of the way it worked.
Exactly. And I've I've shrank my the time it took from someone to not know me at all and to get to the point where they buy. There are ways also, if you understand the different component and if you have the right strategies, to shrink that sales cycle, which I was able to do as well.
No, that's great. That's great. It's really important for people to understand that digital can shrink that sales cycle because they get to know you in a more personalized way with your funnel. Chris, from a product perspective, what does that funnel look like?
So, Seema, our brand is laser focused on being the old-fashioned cocktail mixer. So we don't mess around with gin drinks. We don't mess around with vodka drinks. There's nothing wrong with those, but that's just not the game that we try to play. We want to be the old-fashioned brand, and so all of our marketing is targeted towards people who are already interested in whiskey cocktails, and we invite them into the conversation with a simple promotion. I mean, our lead magnet is a 15% off deal if you subscribe to our email list. And then we get a very high percentage of people that take us up on that. They don't automatically purchase, obviously, but it gives us a chance to begin that one-on-one conversation with them via our email. We try to stay very consistent sending them cocktail recipes, building a relationship, starting to build our brand voice. We find that a lot of people in the cocktail industry, and I've got friends in that world, I love those people, but a lot of them are almost snobby and pretentious when it comes to cocktail culture. And we are very much the opposite of that. We don't care if you're using super crystal clear ice sculptures in your old fashioned. We don't care if you're using handmade rocks glasses. We don't care if you're drinking it out of a red Solo cup with fridge ice. And so we start to kind of develop a little bit of that brand voice, that unpretentious, we don't care how you drink it, as long as you enjoy your old fashioned, that's the right way to do it. And I think we build a little bit of trust with that because we're not looking down our nose at people, and I think it becomes attractive to people. And when we offer them that little incentive, hey, here's 15% off, just give us a try. We're using real ingredients. We're using real cane sugar, real bitters. This is made in Nashville, Tennessee. This is a homegrown business. I think we get people to just give us a chance, and then we know that we have a really high percentage of people who are going to become raving fans, and they come back every single month. When that bottle drains out, they're coming back and they become brand ambassadors for us.
I think there's 3 points in that I want to make sure I emphasize. One, opt-ins matter. Opt-ins can be emails. Emails to me are still gold. There will be gold forever. It could be converting to social media if that's the objective. Matt, you brought up a scenario like that earlier. But I really believe email is gold. What I heard from Chris is now he takes this email and he nurtures a relationship through the content he's providing. We haven't gotten into content, but that's another critical piece of this, right? Through the content. And then you have a brand, your brand voice is coming out through your digital marketing efforts. So you brought up a lot of really good points, but anybody who has a product-based business, that's a strategy. And you started, I'm assuming, with an ad, Chris, right? You're on Facebook or Google, right? That was your initial.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay. So Matt, Maria, Matt, maybe, do you have an example, one quick example? And then I'm going to ask Maria, and then I'm going to open up to questions.
You're looking at an example specifically of
one of your clients, another client of a sales funnel, like something quick that, is a little different, just to get the minds, because we're practical people. I think people just need to hear, what's a tangible funnel look like?
Yeah, okay. So I think everybody kind of gets the idea, right,
Yes.
of what we're trying to do here. Let me give you one practical example. I think oftentimes we get so caught up in the platforms and the mechanics of it, and I think Maria would agree with this, we lose sight of the value of the content. So like I've created one funnel, if you will, we call it a profit path, right, for a client that is selling carpet tiles. And he could sell carpet tiles to any business almost on the planet. We identified churches as being a place that he could target. So the avatar is churches and so pastors and directors of operations at churches. We created 6 assets, and I'll just tell you about one of them. The biggest thing that would keep a church from putting down new carpet or any type of capital investment, a new roof for that matter, is the ability to raise money, right? So we went out, we found 25 pastors that have successfully raised $1 million. And yes, there's ways to do that. We said, hey, if we give you a $100 gift card, will you tell us how you raised $1 million successfully within your congregation? They're like, sure. So they type it up. We compile those. We put them 25 stories into a white paper. Then, guys, I have marketing gold. Yeah. There is not a church in America that wouldn't want to read that article so they could learn how maybe they could raise $1 million in their, congregation. So with that, there's a lot of just social share virility. These guys live in community with each other, but then I can take it on a platform. I can cold email it out, Seema. I can do a lot of things with it, but so don't, as I think maybe you're going to transition into content a little bit, love content. A lot of that is, if you're doing the platforms the same as your competitors and you're executing at the same level, what's going to be the differentiator? It's going to be the quality of the content. So you can't forget that.
And that's the lead magnet.
I wanted to chime into the content aspect of it. There is such a thing as key pieces of content. For example, myself, yes, one of my best ads is not an ad. It's a piece of content talking to my ideal avatar. So, and we actually started running it as an ad by accident. And it started doing better than our actual ad. So having a couple key pieces of content is sometimes good enough to get you to your goal. Again, we can spend all day doing great, cool stuff, but having a couple good pieces of asset, that's sometimes all you need. And I wish all founders understand you do not have to do it all at once to actually win in this. That's my general thing.
Maria?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about, I've got so many examples. I think I'll give an e-commerce example with a toy company that we're working with. And obviously they don't have the dominant market position. And it's a very crowded space. So this one is challenging because they're toys. So how do you actually communicate and cut through the noise, especially as we head into a heavy shopping season, and get in front of moms and convince them that this is the right toy for them? And moms, especially that are working from home with kids in the background and have 3 screens and a laptop up. So it's even more of an uphill battle. And it was easy for the client to get overwhelmed and want to do, a content strategy, launch on all platforms, launch brand, launch product. But we know at the end of the day, our ultimate goal and the result are sales. So how do we work backwards from there, and what's the right way to drive a distinction? So we started with the 1 or 2 toys that were actually unique to that specific brand, and really press them pretty hard on what makes you different. Like, tell us your story before we even launch, because sure, we could put you live on Google and we could put you live on Amazon, and you're just one of the millions of toys out there, but like, tell us your story and let us help you bring that story to life. Because at the end of the day, a mom is going to be very selective about what toys she orders, and it's not just about price or coupons or discounts. So we spent time on, like, what are the 2 to 3 toys that you want to zero in on? Let's start there. And let's focus your creative and messaging on the application, so people can actually identify with your brand. You can build some loyalty versus this transactional type of environment. So we've actually done really well. Their sales have increased 2 times. And from that, we've been able to scale, which means incorporate other toys once we found our sweet spot. And I really encourage that, whether it's an e-commerce brand or someone that's looking to get out, or a purpose-driven brand. I think it's important to just, where do you start? And what's your core? And make sure that message is very, very clear and targeted. And then let's build up from there.
I love, no, we're all really good points. I'm gonna open this up now to a couple questions. This one's from Ian. How do you differentiate digital marketing between sales and business development and communication and brand building? Does one objective lead to another? Is one more important than the other? How do you frame or think about this? So I'll open that up to anyone who's interested in answering. The difference between digital marketing, between sales, business development, and communication and brand building.
I think you can do a little bit of each. For example, me now, I'm at the point where I need to build my sales, improve and build. We were just talking about that, Seema, my sales process. And I am in parallel trying to do more brand building, focusing on personal branding, refining my message. So you can do all this. Actually, I think it's essential to do a little bit of all this all at once to actually, start seeing real results. So it's not one or the other. It's finding the key process in each of these areas.
One thing I would add is that I think with a strong sales funnel, you can do a little bit of both, right? There's brand building. I think that's what Chris was saying. It's like you're nurturing the clients so they understand your personality, but the ultimate goal is to have a sale. So I think an optimal sales funnel has a little bit of both.
Yeah, and that's where I keep going back to the experience. What is the online experience you want to create? And that's when listening to Chris's story, he focused heavily on what's the experience he wanted to create for his audiences, and that builds the loyalty and it helps strengthen your brand because it has a force multiplier. Like, people start sharing and communicating and become loyal to that experience that they've had with you, less about, I saw this great ad on Facebook, or I bought this, it's all about how easy it was for them to get the information and make the purchase and feel confident that they're working with a great company.
Absolutely. And Matt, I saw that you put in some great technical terms in there and just definitions. So folks in the chat, make sure that you do take a look at that.
Yeah, I added some of our like favorite tools. There's obviously a lot of them, but those are kind of what I think are the core, right? So start there, and then you can build out from those. Ian, I'll chime in here a little bit too. I don't know that one is more important than the other, branding or sales, but it really depends on your goal and your need. When I talk to a company and they have to make a sale to make payroll next month, we're not going to be talking about redesigning the website, right? And brand building, okay? We're going to really have to focus on digital tactics that are acting as really your best salesperson. And if you're doing digital well, I really think my experience shows that it should be, take your top 2 or 3 salespeople and their efforts. A good website with good digital tactics behind it should outperform it, right? So, but it's really about if sales are great, and like I've had many companies where they're like, we can't take on any more work right now. Okay, great. This is a perfect time to do more brand building activities for 6 months, 12 months. We encountered this when COVID hit. A lot of our clients were like, hey, this aspect of our business is shutting down. So we were able to focus on some longer term things that once we come out of this on the other side, they'd be better positioned relative to their competition. So.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I'm going to take one more question from the audience, and then I'm going to ask each of you for one, some sort of advice for these founders that are listening in. So this one is about automation. I think it's an important one to talk about. He says, this is from Michael, I resonate with the bootstrap limitations to funnel development, but to that point, how much automation have the panelists used for their funnels, whether click-through funnels or overall sales funnels in general, and what technologies have been useful?
Well, I'll start with that. We've used a lot of automation, but unlike a lot of other offerings, my sales process ends with an actual meeting. So no one can actually just check out and purchase whatever service I'm selling. So there is a human component in mine that is not essential but it's very important when the price, it's a high ticket offering as opposed to something under $100. So you can, if you're selling things that are very low ticket, you can get away with more automation in your sales process. The higher the price is going, the more likely you're going to need some human interaction in the process. Mm-hmm. So that's the first distinction I want to make sure people understand. But I still use automation for all my, I use ClickFunnels for my funnels. I use ConvertKit for my email automation. I use that's probably that. I use a calendar management platform called Calendly. So all these are automated and triggered. I use Zapier to connect all this together. But all this is to get them to speak to an actual person. So at that point, that's where my automation stops, when they start speaking to someone and start doing a career strategy session.
Okay, thank you, Jubee. I'm going to ask each of you, maybe we'll start with Chris, one word of advice or one line or two of advice for our founders here around growth in digital marketing.
I try to tell people, Seema, to develop their brand voice and to have a personality with whatever they're doing. And I think that could be the case whether you are in a service industry like Jubee or an e-commerce brand like Eli Mason. I think it's if you're a digital marketing agency like Matt or Maria are running, I think it's good to have a personality and a style and a voice. And I think that attracts people to your brand, whatever you're doing. So whenever I'm talking to people, like, again, I'm not good at many things, but one of the few things that I am pretty okay at is helping people identify like what their voice is. I think it's very important.
No, I love that. I love that. Matt?
Yeah, so what's this, the one takeaway, right?
The one takeaway.
I'm typing in, trying to answer some things. Okay. Gosh, boy, there's so many. I think I think at some point, every brand is going to need to engage an expert on some level, right? And so, you know, not selling Maria and myself as agency partners, right? But at some point, you're going to need help. You know, Chris knows old fashions a whole lot better than I ever will, right? On a lot of levels. So I think, you know, really, I think hire well in that respect, interview extensively. And then once you've landed, trust them until they show you and give you reason otherwise not to. Right? You may not think, man, my audience, Matt, they're not on Facebook. They're not there. Trust me. Let me try. Let me try.
Yeah, it's not the place to be to be scamping around, you know, trying to save a buck. Your partner in marketing, you know, you have to just go and get the people who actually can help you, not the least expensive, the cheapest option out there.
They become an extended part of your team,
Yes.
right? Especially because when you're a founder, you don't really have a strong marketing team. So when you do find the right partner, 100%.
Yeah, it ends up being way cheaper. Believe me.
Maria, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so a couple things. Before you even try digital advertising, I think it's important that you know your value prop and even further, know your competition's value prop. There's a lot of founders that I work with in organizations that are so focused on their product, their services, and we really encourage them to take a step back and just look at the landscape and really understand that landscape, because I think it's going to be key to finding your cutting edge and kind of breaking through the clutter. In terms of interviewing and hiring an agency, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's important that you ask them for examples of their campaign reports. Get a look under the hood, to Matt's point, but get an idea of what data they look at and evaluate. We all know at the end of the day, there's one key objective, whether it's sales or email requests or downloads. We know that, but there's a lot that feeds that in terms of leading and lagging indicators to help an agency determine what levers to pull for you and how to optimize your campaign. And transparency is important in how they share that data and how they share this reporting. That's where the true partnership comes to life, because like I said earlier, it takes 90 days. And even from 90 days, you're going to continue to pivot as you kind of build up your organization. So you need a partner that understands your business, understands the landscape, and that comes with you understanding it too. And then secondly, understanding what data they look at. And I know I keep focusing on the data. I just think it's so important because it drives a lot of decisions versus just throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping for the best. You want them confident in, this is a lever I'm going to pull and why, and here's the data that I'm kind of using to support that. And more importantly, here's what I think is going to happen for it. So with any agency you interview or any company that you decide to work with, get it. They all will show you use cases. We all are very proud of brands we work with, but take it a step further and say, I want a couple examples of what a campaign report looks like. Walk me through your process and what it would be like to be your partner.
Yeah, no, and a lot of good stuff in there. Jubee, any last minute, or are we good?
No, I give it all.
Listen.
Oh yes, I have one last thing. If you can. Not every founder can or is at that point where they are comfortable doing it. You know, personal branding helps. You know,
that is so true.
Yeah,
you are the company, right?
Yeah, be a face. When I was willing and comfortable doing that, this is when I start seeing results. People want to connect the business with a face. I do understand as well. All founders are at a different place in their journey, so it's not for everyone, you know.
No, I agree. But there's a when you have authority in the marketplace and you're trying to be an industry leader. I do a lot of work with founders and CEOs on that. It distinguishes yourself completely from somebody else when your brand is distinguished and when you as a CEO is also distinguished. So with that, guys, it is getting close to 3 o'clock. I really want to thank each and every one of you, Maria, Matt, Jubee, Chris. What great insights. Looking forward to getting the reviews on this particular panel, but you guys did exactly what I asked, educated, provided really good examples and strategies. So thank you all so much. All right.
Thank you for having us.
Take care. And for the rest of you, please, I'll see you at the next session. We have multiple sessions that you could check out on Attendify. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.